The case of Tinker v. Moines was a case that made its way to the Supreme Court in 1969. This case would go on to define the rights of children and teenagers all across the nation in their schools. But before we get into the ruling and decision, we need to go back to Des Moines, Iowa, in the December of 1965. At the time, the Vietnam War was running rampant. The citizens of the USA were scared and confused. They were angry as to why they were even at war again. So, a group of students decided to take things into their own hands to make a difference in their community. In protest of the war and to advocate for peace, they decided to peacefully protest by wearing black armbands. We lay our scene in Des Moines, in the Des Moines School District at a junior high.
Jeez, this Vietnam War is a real bummer. Napalm should be illegal. It's basically torture for innocent people. That's why we're using our First Amendment right to peacefully protest the war by wearing our black armbands.
Yeah, we are taking initiative and peacefully protesting for peace. They can't stop us. They're simply armbands. We are doing our part to spread awareness about the cruelty happening in Vietnam.
Hey look, it's the principal. We can tell him about our protest so that we can spread awareness. He's an adult, so he has more of a voice than we do. Let's try to get him on board. Hey Mr. Principal, do you like black armbands? We're wearing them to protest the Vietnam War and advocate for peace.
Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Tinker. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to take those armbands off. They're against school policy.
It's not against school policy. We are protected by our First Amendment right to peacefully protest and our freedom of speech. For your information, that includes symbolic speech like the armbands.
Actually, Mrs. Tinker, those armbands are distracting and disruptive. They are taking away from our learning in the classroom. Once again, I'm going to have to ask you to take them off, or else I'm going to have to take further action.
What? No, these armbands aren't disruptive in any way, shape, or form. We are simply trying to spread awareness. They are totally peaceful. It's not like they're going to jump off and start yelling at people to advocate for peace. Ha 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 ha!
Did you just raise your voice at me, young man? That's enough. Take them off, or I will be forced to suspend you both. I know the rules at my school, and unless you want to extend suspension, I suggest you never raise your voice at me again, Tinker. Well, make yourselves at home until your parents have arrived.
Unbelievably stupid and unfair.
What was that, Mr. Tinker?
You heard me. We are protected by our First Amendment rights to peacefully protest as long as we are being disruptive and harming anyone.
Well, for your information, Mr. and Mrs. Tinker, since you are on school campus, you have released some of your rights in order to maintain and withhold a safe and constructive learning environment. For this reason, I am forced to suspend you both of you for being disruptive in the learning environment.
This is so unfair. You know what? We're gonna sue you for violating our rights as human beings and as citizens of the United States of America.
Yeah.
Good luck with that, little lady.
The U.S. Court of Appeals and District Courts for Des Moines both dismissed the case, stating that the school had the right to decide whether or not the students could wear their black armbands on school property. Eventually, the case was taken to the United States Supreme Court, where the debate finally took place. Here we set our scene.
Order in the court! This case is brought before us today to decide students nationwide should have the right to freedom of speech and symbolic speech whilst on school property or campus. Plaintiff, you may state your grievance and make your argument.
Your Honor, me and my sister and a group of about 24 other students were wrongfully punished by the Des Moines School District for exercising our right of symbolic speech, which is granted to us and protected by the First Amendment. The armbands that we wore were not distracting, peaceful, and did not interfere with any learning in this or in school curricular activities.
Thank you, Mr. Tinker. Defendant, you may begin your argument.
1.
Thank you, Your Honor. In order to advocate for peace and protest in the Vietnam War, the students wore black armbands around their upper arms. This, as I illustrated to them, is a violation of school policy. When kindly asked to remove their armbands, they simply refused. This resulted in their suspension from the school. When the students enter school property or on school campus, they release some of their rights to create a peaceful and productive learning environment for all the other students attending the school.
1.
Objection. Mr. Principal is assuming facts that are not found in any evidence.
The objection is sustained.
Our protest was peaceful and neither harmed nor distracted any student from learning. This expression of symbolic speech was simply representing our opinion and our right to peacefully protest the Vietnam War and its cruelty based on our opinions.
Even if your protest was not being disruptive or distracting at the time, we had to take immediate action to stabilize and maintain a safe learning environment.
In previous years, the school has allowed presidential shirts, hats, buttons, and many other symbolic objects in the past to be worn by students. The students who chose to wear these items were not punished or suspended. The black armbands that we chose to wear were no different from their symbolic items.
Thank you for presenting your facts and stating your cases. We will decide on your case as soon as possible to ensure the fairest decision will be made. Court adjourned.
2,000 years later.
Welcome back. This has been a very difficult case to decide upon because the outcome of this case will affect all public school students nationwide. Over the course of the past few months, we had to decide which circumstances in which the restriction of the right to freedom of speech, expression, and symbolic speech is permitted. In the end, we've decided that in order for the school to restrict this right the students bear, the act in question must materially, substantially, and unnecessarily interfere with the function of learning time in the school. The act must also directly impede of the regular fluid function of the staff's job and the students' learning in order to restrict and prohibit speech on school grounds. In the case of Tinker versus Des Moines, the protest held by the students was peaceful and passive. The students were not disrupting class time and the overall learning of the other students, so the black armbands must be tolerated by the school district of Des Moines. The school was simply trying to prevent any disruption the armbands may cause. Schools nationwide cannot infringe on students' rights to free speech if it is non-disruptive and independent. In conclusion, in a 7-2 majority, the court has ruled in favor of the plaintiff. Court dismissed.
Yes!
In conclusion, the case of Tinker v. Des Moines answered the question of whether or not schools should be allowed to restrict students' right to freedom of speech, protected by the First Amendment in order to maintain peace and safety in the school environment. In this case, it was proven that schools do not have the complete right to restrict the right of students' civil liberties if they are peaceful and non-destructive. However, this does not mean that all free speech is allowed on school grounds. Remember, if the free speech impedes on the school's ability to function, then it can and will be restricted by the school. An example of this can be seen in the future case named Morse v. Frederick. In this case, a student yielded a banner that said "Bong hits for Jesus" at a school rally. Although this took place off campus, it was at a school event and it was inappropriate because it was referring to the use of marijuana in the name of Lord and Savior baby Jesus Emmanuel Christ. Therefore, the banner had to be taken down, and the school had the right to do so. Thank you for watching, and God bless the holy and sacred land for all, America. Good night, Alpharetta.
Stop.